Welcome to Josh's Green Garage. In this video we have a new part to install. This is part number BW15044. It is a hydraulic pressure relief valve that you would think this tractor has, but it doesn't, and I'm going to tell you all about it and show you how to install it. Okay, so here's the valve. It's a hydraulic pressure relief valve, like I stated in the beginning of the video. And what it does is normally these are marketed for if you're going to be using a front end loader on these tractors. You put that in there because if you're moving along and you get stopped real quick pushing the bucket into something, it can cause a hydraulic surge in the system and potentially damage the transaxle. Why they don't just install these factory from, Tuff Torq or wherever, I don't know. But none of them come with it. It has to be added. You can see this is a Tuff Torq part, not even John Deere. They just re-part number it and sell it themselves. So you could probably get it from Tuff Torq as well, also through your dealer or wherever you may find it. Now the reason I'm getting this is because, or installing it right now, I was looking into loaders a little bit, found out that this is even a thing, because I didn't even know this was a thing. John Deere doesn't really market it or tell you that, hey, if you're going to be doing ground engaging stuff, it'd probably be a good idea. But along the lines of a front loader, even like my ripper or a plow, anything that any of you may be doing ground engaging, it's probably a good idea to have one of these now thinking about it, because the only time you would ever know about these otherwise is if you get a loader for one of the older X4, 5, or 700s, or if you're using the tractor bucket thingy that they sell, that's an attachment to go on a 54-inch plow blade. It also talks about needing this and that. But otherwise, nothing ever mentions this. It doesn't tell you this anywhere, like on the website, with any of the, the fact that you can use ground engaging equipment. It doesn't talk about this valve or anything from what I've seen. So I'm kind of lucky I stumbled across it. So pulling my ripper through the ground, I'm going to be pulling it through a lot of different roots and things like that. So I figured if that's going to be stopping the tractor dead in its tracks at all, it'd probably be a good idea to have this. Now it does say for the modern X700 series, if you're going to have below 250 pounds of ballast when using a front loader, that you wouldn't need this. However, just in wheel weights, I'm sitting at 250. So if I were to put anything additional on there with a front loader, it would be too much. Now, for pulling an implement, it doesn't really say anything about that, but I would imagine it's the fact that there's this much weight in a tractor moving forward, and if it gets stopped, there's that much energy that's still trying to travel that's going to surge back through the hydraulic system. So I figured it's probably a good idea to have one of these, and I figured, hey, people don't know about this. Well, people with front loaders know about this. People that don't probably don't know about it. So here I am. I'll show you guys how it works. Additionally, with this part, you have to get this piece, and this is the freewheeling lever that is on the back right side of the tractor that you gotta push to the upward position, and that depresses these valves and allows fluid to flow through the system unobstructed. That way you can push the tractor. You can see it has this crook in it here. This is because this valve sits higher than the factory valves, which you'll see when I get into it. So you'll need to get this part as well. This is M146148. There's no other part for this. This is a common part to any Tuff Torq K90 series transaxle, so it doesn't matter if you have an X4, 5, older 700 or new 700. These, however, are different. There's a 2-wheel drive and a 4-wheel drive part number for these, and I will put those part numbers in the description. So please check the description for information on these part numbers. So I'm going to move you around a little bit and we'll get into it. All right, now the manual for this thing actually doesn't tell you anything whatsoever other than the fact that you need to make sure you're using the correct 2-wheel drive or 4-wheel drive valve. In this case, 4-wheel drive, and it is stamped on the side of the valve. So it says to reference the 45 loader manual in order to have installation instructions, which I have pulled up I think on my computer. I'll find it and I'll be using that during the install once we get to that point. But in order to even get there in the first place, we need to do a few things first. First, we need to remove the seat. Then we need to remove the fender deck. And in order to do that, well, I've done it too many times now, and I kind of hate it, but you need a 6mm Allen key in order to get the seat frame off. And then you need a 1/2" socket, and then preferably a 1/4" drive socket wrench. And that's probably like a 3" extension in order to get all the rest of the bolts off for the fender deck. So let's get into that. I'm gonna start with the seat. However, I just realized this is 3/8" drive. So I'm gonna need to grab that one. I'm gonna do that and then we'll get back to it. All right, I'm back with my 3/8" wrench. Now, one thing we also need to do is disconnect this electrical plug. So we're gonna do that first, get that out of the way, because we're gonna need to fish that through there when pulling this bad boy off, and that can sometimes prove to be a little bit of a pain. In removing this, I always start with the front 2 bolts and then move to the rear 2. So I'm just gonna go ahead and knock those out. I hate this part because these are always a pain to get back in. From here, we can slide our seat up. Gives you access to the rear bolts. And then you can lift your seat off. Now, like I said, it can kind of be a pain because this likes to kind of flop up, and then you got to get that connector out of there. This is definitely a 2-person job if you have a second person available, which I'm going to try to not use the wife for this because she's sick right now. All right, so we got that out. So then you can just lift your seat off and you're good to go. One step down. If my fender deck was in perfect condition, which it used to be, I would be more concerned about having a second person for this. That way you're not like scratching it up or whatever. But since I put this nice dent in the back here, I really don't care about tiny scratches anymore. All right, so now we need to take off the fender deck. Now, in order to do so, there is a connector. I can't remember which side. I think it's under this side. There's a connector under here for the light wiring. So we'll push that in, get that off. And that does both sides. There's only one connector under that side. You don't have to connect anything from that side. Now we got, holding this handle down, there is a like metal hook type thing that goes under, and it basically supports this end of the fuel tank underneath of here. You do not have to take that metal piece all the way off. I think some people do that. You don't have to. All you need to do is loosen it enough that you can kind of turn it out of the way. And then we got 4 more bolts. There's 2 on either side near the footrests. So I'm just gonna look up under here. And this is where that extension comes in handy. See what I'm talking about? That metal part there. All you gotta do is do that to get it out of the way. Some people take that all the way off. You don't gotta do that. All right, can you see this bolt head in here? So we got 4 of those. You won't need your extension for this part. But there's one right here near the edge, and then there's one closer to the inner side of the tire. Now these ones you don't need a wrench for. They have like a little like clip-on nut plate kind of deal there. And these are an absolute pain to get back in. Two down. All right, I got the other side off. There's no point in really showing you that, so I didn't. The only thing left to do is take off your fuel cap. And then from there, you'll be able to lift this whole thing off. It's not really that heavy of a fender deck. However, it can be challenging getting it back on by yourself. And then just set this aside. Put your fuel cap on right away then, of course. That way you're not introducing any extra contaminants. I'm gonna change our angle here and then show you the last thing you gotta do. Okay, so you're kind of at the front of the tractor now, looking kind of more towards the rear. This is the front, bottom of the fender deck there where like your mower deck height adjustment is. But basically this valve right here is what we're going to be swapping out. This is that lever that we're going to be replacing, so I need to be able to get that out. In order to do so, I'm pretty sure there's a spring clip like this over here on this end, so I need to get access to that. In order to do so, I just got to move the tank a little bit, so you got to take this bar off. This bar is what the rear part of the seat fastens to. So there again, you're using your same socket wrench and 1/2-inch socket. So this is at this point pretty easy as far as the tools go. And then of course drop it on the ground like that. That's a really good idea. And then you got your bar off, so you can set that aside. Now from here, some people may opt to take this whole tank off. I'm not going to do that. Like I said, you just gotta, oh, there's not a spring over there. It just slides out. Okay. So realistically, you probably don't quite even need to do that. I'm going to just try to do it without it, just to see. However, at this point, you can kind of look up under here. If you've ever spilt a ton of fluid in here, filling your transaxle like I have, it might be kind of dirty. Mine actually looks pretty clean right now, even though I just spilled a ton of fluid under there when I changed it last. But you can clean under there now if you need to. That would be a great idea. Additionally, one thing I'm going to do is you have great access to this grease fitting, so you don't gotta crawl around underneath the mower in order to do so, to get to that fitting to grease that. So this grease fitting for your drive shaft there, I would definitely look into doing that at the same time, since you're already right here. It's just smart thinking ahead, that kind of thing. All right, I'm gonna go get the actual manual at this point and start going based off of the 45 install manual. That way I'm not telling you guys anything wrong here. I do all this stuff per the manual, so I'll be right back. All right, so I got the instructions on my tablet here. This is for installing it like on I think it said X4 and 500 tractors, so a little bit of this stuff is different and I don't think it's going to apply. We'll get in here and see. The first thing I want to do, well actually no, we'll remove this bar first, then we'll get into that. So this of course is telling me to remove this bar, move the tank. I already removed the bar. I don't think I necessarily need to move the tank, but we'll see. If I have to, I have to. It's not a huge deal. But I don't think there's any need to take the whole tank off of the machine. So let's see. This talks about step 12, remove and discard cap nut E from freewheeling valve control lever. Now in this picture, it's showing that there's a cap nut on this other end of this. I didn't notice one when I initially looked, so I don't think on this tractor I need to worry about it. If you have something older, you may need to worry about that. It says, note, retain plastic cap for new freewheeling valve control lever. That is the cap that is down here on the side of the machine that slides against the frame. So don't get rid of that one, but the one, it would be, I would imagine, a metal cap on this side. You would need to get that one. This also shows a bit different setup. The picture here, it shows like a metal spring and everything in here. So unfortunately, like, I haven't seen the older tractors. I don't know exactly what they look like, so I don't know if I'm going to be able to 100% help you on that. As far as this tractor though, this spring clip, you just lift up on one end and then pull on it and it comes out. And then this will just slide right off. Let's see, getting this out, we're probably gonna have to twist around a bit. Well, let's see here. We may have to remove this bracket, so we might actually have to get the, might have to move this tank out of the way a little bit. Let's see what we can do here. I got a vacuum here because we're gonna clean this area up. If we can wiggle this out, we might be in business. But getting that new one in, I think, is going to be a bit of a pain. This could be a problem because that's not going... Oh, wait. If we take this off, then that should slide through there. All right, maybe this tank's gonna be a bit more of a problem than I thought initially. Come on, so close. All right, that was fun. So we got that out. I'm going to grab the new one. It looks like we should be able to get that in there the same way. However, this doesn't quite look like it has that little spring clip hole. So we'll have to see how this is going to work. There again, this isn't really a requirement for this specific tractor because you're not supposed to need it for these, and they don't have you do loader work with these. Okay, so that was really easy to get in. That'll go through there. Put that on there. So that'll all work nicely. However, I'm probably gonna have to drill a hole into this in order to get that spring clip back through there and hold this in. Otherwise, this can just slide back and forth, and it needs to stay where it's at. So I'm gonna, how do I want to do this? Yeah, we could do that now. I'm gonna go get something to put a little mark there, and then I'm gonna get that taken care of first, I think, before I do this valve. All right, so what I'm doing is I'm just kind of making sure these are centered over those valves enough that these flats will depress those valves. This is engaged in this side, and then I have some tension here so that when I slide this, it's not, you know, just kind of flopping around. There's a little bit of pressure there, but it's also not binding on this piece that supports the seat. So I'm just gonna make a mark right in there, and I'm gonna kind of bump that mark versus where the hole is on the factory lever, and I'm gonna get a hole drilled at that same location. I kind of love this. I mean, it's annoying that I have to do extra steps here, but at least you guys, if you plan to do this or whatever, you'll see exactly what you need to do and what you can expect. So there's my mark. We're gonna move over to the tailgate there and see what we got to do. Okay, now I don't know exactly how well you can see this, but in lining these two levers up. My mark is right about where I want it to be. So basically I need to drill just on this side of that mark there, and that'll get me in a good spot. I want to see. Okay, this hole was a little bigger than I thought it was going to be. Looks like a 3/32 hole. Okay, so that's what size I'm going to be drilling into that. Just going to make a mark so that I can get it at a similar angle. So we're going to be going right about there. Check it again. That looks to be about perfectly in line with where the one from factory was. And then I'm going to center punch that. Wish I had a good way to kind of hold this in place. But I don't want my bit to walk off that round portion there. Sorry if you're not getting all of this. Got a little bit of a mark. This might be kind of a challenge. I'm probably gonna have to get creative and like clamp this to something. I'm gonna go figure that one out. I'm probably not gonna video this portion, but what I'm probably gonna end up doing is very carefully trying to start drilling that with a 1/16, and then step it up to the size I need. If I have to, I'll kind of grind a little flat in there to give me a good flat spot to drill on, but we'll see what happens. So I'm just going to take care of this and then I'll be back, because sometimes this stuff gets to be a little bit of a pain and kind of monotonous and takes forever to video. All right, so I got my hole. I just got to upsize it from there. I didn't end up having to drill a flat on there or grind a flat on there. I just was very careful with the 1/16. Just took it easy. So I'm just going to step it up from here, one size at a time. So next 5/64. I'm going to go from the opposite direction. That way it kind of takes off some of those little burrs from the backside. Nice. And then, like I said, the 3/32 here, that went very cleanly through the factory bar. So we'll finish up with 3/32. And there we go. We got our nice hole in there. It's just inside, basically the thickness of that hole is just inside our mark there. So it should put us right in line with factory. That line was a little bit over because of course the marker won't fit right in next to the frame that was there. So yeah, holding this up, that is like perfectly in line. So let's go back to the tractor, see how it fits. All right. Make sure you get this in there the correct way, like so. I'll put my plastic cap on there, don't forget that. And then come in here with our little clip. Like so. Seems to work just fine. I don't have it rubs a little bit right up here, but I don't really think that's an issue. Honestly, like, I don't really ever even use this freewheel valve, so I probably could have had a little bit less pressure on that, but at least this way I know it's in there. It's not going to go anywhere though, so I'm happy with that. So I'm going to just take this back out just to make everything else in here a little easier. But I like how that turned out. All right, so at this point, before I do anything else, I want to get this area cleaned. You want to have this good and clean because at this point, hydraulic fluid has already been filtered in this machine. And in going here, you don't want to introduce any additional contaminants or anything. So I have an old toothbrush here I'm going to use to scrub all that. I also have a vacuum here that I'm going to use to vacuum all this stuff up. So here we go. All right, so we're nice and clean. So moving on, our next step is going to be, so this tells you there again, it's talking about removing that freewheel lever. So it tells you to remove the plastic cap, remove and discard the existing freewheel lever. I wouldn't just discard this stuff, you never know. Somebody, if you get rid of the tractor down the road, somebody may want to revert it back for some reason. Why you would, I don't know, because all you're doing is protecting the machine and doing this. But probably not a bad idea to just hang on to it. You're going to remove and retain the washer and spring from freewheeling valve control lever. Of course, mine didn't have that. It just had a little spring clip there to just hold it in. So, and then here, important, avoid damage. Clean transaxle before removing valve. Contamination from hydraulic system may cause damage. So I cleaned around there really well. I think I'm gonna vacuum a little more even once I crack this and start removing it, just in case there's anything still under, because it's kind of recessed in there and my brush couldn't quite get down all the way in there. So I'll clean a little bit more as I start removing that. Step 16, remove existing freewheeling valve from right-hand location. So that is this one. So I need to go get a pretty sizable wrench. I'm gonna figure that one out and then we'll be back. All right, now most people probably aren't gonna have a regular wrench big enough for this and a metric size, being this is, you know, made by Kanzaki, the Tuff Torq company. It would be metric. However, the biggest I had in metric was a 24 millimeter, and that would not cut it. So I have a 1 1/16, which is also pretty massive. You might just want to go to an adjustable, and this still fits it. There's a little bit of play, but there's enough of a bite on there. So we're just gonna get that on there and try to crack it loose. Maybe don't try that. It's in there pretty tight. It seems like it's wanting to kind of break over on the side there. So probably just gonna have to do an adjustable. That way we can get that on there nice and tight. And I feel like this is gonna be quite a challenge, because I don't even have any swing on that. Okay, so I put a 12 thousandths leaf gauge in there. That tightened it up pretty good. Let's see if we can get it loose with that. Yep. I broke my gauge though. Bent that right over. Not a big deal. Those things aren't super expensive, but it's better than damaging this. Now, alternatively, of course, always use the right tool for the job. So getting the proper millimeter wrench probably would have done it, but this works as well. And now I should be able to get this going. So I know I'll probably catch some flack for that one, but sometimes it's not worth going to buy a tool like that if you're only going to use it once. But then again, there's plenty of stuff I buy because I'm only going to use it once. So I can see I still got a little bit of debris and stuff there, so I'll keep vacuuming this as I go. And that'll probably do it. and there's our valve. I'm gonna sit this in that spot here and just thread that in a little bit. I don't want debris getting in there until I get the new one ready to go in. So here's our new valve. You can see how much taller it was than that one I just pulled out. You can see this even says Tuff Torq on it. They're the ones that make it. Even the bag that the little instruction manual, if you could call it that, even that bag said in it, Tuff Torq right on the stamping. So I think they make this part specifically probably for the John Deere tractors. And this is covered in some probably hydraulic fluid. I'm gonna just leave it as it is. It doesn't say to do anything extra to here. Literally just install the valve. Now you can see how much taller it is. And then on the top, it says, kind of maybe hard for you guys to see, but it says 4WD and then some part numbers and whatnot. But that's our valve. So just gonna take this off very carefully. A little bit of a difference there, but you can see how much different those valves are. Oh, that's right. I think if I remember correctly from what I've read, there's a second part in there. So let me backpedal for a second here. Okay, so I'm going to show you guys real quick what I did. This was a tool. What do I want to say this was from? I think we got like a little, I think it's like a little exercise like trampoline thing for my daughter. And I think this is what it used to like bend or pull the pieces over it. Or no, when I was in Alaska, it was for, we had a bigger outside trampoline, that's right. And you use this to pull the springs over and attach it, but it had just a little hook on that. So what I did is, since it doesn't appear like there's any threads on the new valve that far down, I figured it's probably just sitting in there. So there's these little holes on the side of this piece, and I basically just put that in there and just kind of started wiggling it ever so slightly until it just kind of like broke free. Okay. And then I have this piece here. So that is an extra piece in there that you would need to take out. Just be careful with it. You don't want to damage it. Hang on to this stuff. I'm going to go put this safely over on the tailgate. And it still doesn't seem to want to go down unless... Okay, there's an O-ring. So I'm going to turn this in reverse until I feel threads drop in. There. And just carefully start threading that in. Sorry, I know this is slow. I'm just being very careful. I have not done this before, so just making sure not to screw anything up. So there, I was able to thread that in basically all the way by hand. It is a little bit lubricated there, so it's kind of hard to get a grip, but then it just says install the new one, and then it talks about installing the lever again. So I'm going to come back down here closer to the base of this and tighten it back in. And then I'll put my damaged leaf gauge in there again. And I'm not going to put too much pressure on there. There again, this is aluminum. So I think that'll probably be about enough. It doesn't give a torque spec or anything. So I think I'll call it good there. I'm going to get a rag real quick and get this cleaned up. All right, I got that wiped up and everything. So I apologize. I know this took forever. There again, first time doing it, so I'm taking my time, trying to be careful with things. But everything looks good. Everything went in well, so that's good. So now we can put back on our freewheel lever here. So it talks about putting the original washer, then spring onto the new control lever, which I'm not going to have to do that, and then install the new lever on the machine. Install a cap nut on the other end, which in my case I don't have to do. Then install the plastic cap, and then just reinstall everything else that we've had to remove for this whole process. So here we go. Like such. And then now that we got this new lever, that would put us in our freewheel mode, and you would be able to push the tractor forward and backward. So like I said, I don't use that too much, but that's how that works. Unfortunately, you have to buy this lever, otherwise you won't be able to get this valve in there and have a lever. So I mean, I guess if you didn't want to have to be able to freewheel it, you could just not put a lever in there. But then you're definitely not going to be able to push it, and these things are hard enough to push by hand anyway as it is. So yeah, that's that. That's the install for this valve. At this point, you can go ahead and get everything reinstalled. We'll start by setting our tank down. Well, first let me grab some grease. I'm going to grease that up. All right, now there are two of these grease fittings on this drive shaft. There's one on the bottom side. Now luckily, since this is pointed straight up, it's actually convenient for the bottom side, so I'll just have to crawl under there to grease the bottom side of this. Little thought a pump was enough, and then I started seeing it run out, so it's about where we want to be. And now we're just gonna reinstall everything. So set our fuel tank back down. Nothing wild here. Gotta grab that bar. And make sure I get this the right way. Like so. And that one I dropped. Definitely recommend starting all of these by hand if it's your first time doing it and you don't know yet. These little like nut plate thingies that they have on the bottom, they don't end up being in the right spot really, and there's not a lot of side-to-side wiggle room even though this bar is slotted. So you really don't want to put one side in and then try to just go into town with a tool, because chances are, like, see, these are already like tight trying to go in. It's not the greatest machining of this part, or not even machining, it looks like it's just stamped. So just get them started, otherwise you're going to end up stripping out all your threads. I mean, of course you can get new bolts, but Gotta keep from doing that, of course. All right, there's that. Of course, make sure this isn't underneath there. This goes up through the fender deck and connects to your seat, so you don't want to get that pinched under there. If you are planning on bundling maintenance, since you're going to have this off, it probably wouldn't be a bad idea to do transaxle fluid changes at this point, because then you have easy access to this. So if you spill a crap ton like I have every time I've done this, it makes it really easy to get in there and clean. So just a little food for thought if you're going to do that. So next step is going to be to set the fender deck back on. All right, so I had Mrs. Josh's Green Garage help me get this back on. I didn't show her. She's not feeling well, so not really dressed for camera. However, some things to take note of. Of course, make sure that this is fed all the way up through and isn't getting pinched underneath this center section, depending on how it gets bent. This is going to want to wobble around a little bit. It's kind of weird how like unsecure this feels until you get all the bolts back in. But make sure this gets all pulled up. Of course, you got to remove the fuel tank cap again. And then make sure that it sits down and that that little bracket on the side isn't in the way. But once you get it back on, it's pretty much just assembling everything in reverse. So you'll do your 4 bolts up front, the one over here, reconnect your lights. I'm gonna blow through that real quick and we'll be back. Oh, also there is a tab on the front of the fender deck that fits underneath this portion of the fender deck. So make sure you get that in there too. It's not going to go in if you don't slide that in and under. And it's kind of weird. You have to do that once this is sufficiently over the fuel tank filler neck. It's a little bit odd. You might have to mess with it a little bit, but eventually it'll fit in. And just a little more help gets the seat back on. These are always a pain in the butt to get in. So there again, like, definitely just do finger tight first. Well, I'll try to thread in my hand first, don't take like an impact or anything in there. Nothing ever seems to line up between the body or the fender pan and the bracket under there. So it's always a nightmare getting those in for some reason. That one seemed to at least start easily. There again, like, I kind of hate the way they have this mount, because the whole front, that piece is basically just floating in there. Like, the seat's only mounted to the pan in the front. It's not supported by the frame or anything. The seat's only supported by the frame in the rear here, and it's just, I don't know. I don't think the greatest design, but it's what we got. But this stuff just never seems to line up. I think I got it. I'm just trying to shake everything because it moves that fender pan just a little bit to where you can get these going. Okay, so now they're going. But you can see, like, those little nut plate things in there just don't even fit very well, or it won't even be straight right away. They just float around. And I mean, I get it, like, it makes for the movement to be wherever it needs to be, but now at this point, do not tighten these bolts all the way down solid. I found that it's easier to leave them a little bit loose. That way, when you go to do the front ones, you can move these rails around first off in order to get the front bolts in. But also, if you have them tightened down and they're putting any amount of pressure where the seat rolls on to go forward and back, it is either going to make your seat really not tough, but just not smooth going forward and back, or when you leave it loose, you can move them around to where it'll smoothly go back and forth, and then you can tighten them down incrementally from there. That way you have a nice smooth action. So I'm gonna go ahead and do the front and get this finished up. All right, the seat's all bolted down, so our last thing to do is just hook back up our seat switch. And then I just kind of tuck that back down inside there. That way it's not sticking out in the way of the seat flipping forward and back. It should just go nicely in there, like so. And with that, you're done. Just definitely make sure that your connector over here for your tail lights and everything, make sure you hook that back up. It's an easy one to forget. But yeah, other than that, you're done. And there you have it, the install of the hydraulic pressure relief valve on the John Deere X700 series tractors. As I said before, this will also work for your older 400, 500, and older X700 series, or anything for that matter that is going to have the K90 series transaxles. Like I said, this is only something that generally you're going to see if you're doing loader work or that tractor bucket attachment. Until looking into stuff like that and reading about it, you know, I had no clue about this valve thing. I figured these already would have had relief valves to protect themselves, but it seems like based on weight, that is the reason why you need a different relief valve, so it relieves at a different pressure. I wish I knew more about it. Unfortunately, these things, like, they don't just make like whole books as to everything that goes into them or why they're needed and things like that. I can really only gather the information that I can gather from it. But yeah, pretty easy install. If you guys have any questions or anything, let me know. Hopefully this will keep this tractor protected in the event that I ever get stopped really abruptly from something that I'm either ripping through the yard or eventually one day with a loader or anything like that. So we'll see. But yeah, other than that, thank you for watching. Hope this is helpful. Other than that, have a good one.